Hello students. Students, in the previous session we have done chapter number 1, and in this session we are going to take up chapter number 2, and the name of this chapter is Systematics of Living Organisms. Now, as we know that there is a great diversity of organisms around us, and we humans, we have been exploiting this wealth for our own benefits. Now, during this process of exploiting this wealth, man has tried to differentiate between and identify the various organisms around them. And this method of or the process has given rise to classification of these organisms. And the method of classification, it dates back to the ancient times when the Indian, Greek and the Roman philosophers, they have contributed their might to systematize the science that we are studying today. Now, talking about the classification method, this classification system, it has always kept on changing. Why is it keeping on changing all the time? Because then there is always some new information that is made available. And in this modern era, the modern technology such as genetics, it makes it possible to unravel the evolutionary relationship to greater and greater details. Now, to study this classification, the 5-kingdom system is the most common way of grouping the living organisms based on their simple distinctive features. And the 5-kingdom system that we are studying in today's world also, it is being developed by Robert H. Whittaker in the year 1969. And it was built on the work of a previous biologist whose name was Carl Linnaeus. Now, before Whittaker, many scientists have given their system classification. They have proposed their way of system classification. But the 5-kingdom system that was given by R.H. Whittaker, it was widely used, and it is still used because it was based on certain relevant criterions such as cell structure of the organism, the thallus organization, mode of nutrition, reproduction and their phylogenetic relationship. Now, of course, R.H. Whittaker, he has given this 5-kingdom classification on the work which was done by the previous biologist whose name was Carl Linnaeus. Carl Linnaeus, he classified the living organisms into 2 kingdoms. Okay, so these 2 kingdoms, it was based on the mode of nutrition and also whether the organism is migratory or sedentary. That means if it is motile or if it is non-motile. Now, as Carl Linnaeus, he had given only 2-kingdom classification. It could not classify the organisms that shows characters of both kingdoms, for example, bacteria, fungi, euglena, etc. And to avoid this confusion, R.H. Whittaker in 1969, he proposed the 5-kingdom system of classification, which is widely used in today's date as well. So as I told you, Whittaker, he proposed that organisms, they should be broadly divided into kingdoms based on certain criteria such as the structure of the cell, their mode of nutrition, their source of nutrition, interrelationship between the organisms, their body organization and their reproduction process. And according to this system, there are 5 main kingdoms which is proposed by him. The first one is kingdom Monera, which is made up of prokaryotes. These are particularly bacteria. So these are prokaryotic organisms. They are unicellular and their mode of nutrition, it is either by absorption or photosynthesis. Okay. And if we talk about their locomotion, they are both motile and non-motile, and their mode of reproduction is always asexual. Then speaking about the next kingdom, that is kingdom Protista. These are eukaryotes, and again they are both unicellular as well as multicellular. Mode of nutrition, it is either by absorption, it can be ingestion, and it can also be photosynthetic. And their mode of reproduction can be sexual and asexual. The third one is kingdom fungi. And kingdom fungi is again purely eukaryotic, multicellular, and their mode of nutrition is by absorption. And if we speak about their locomotion, they are non-motile, and their mode of reproduction is sexual. The fourth one is kingdom Animalia, which is again eukaryotic, multicellular, mode of nutrition is ingestion, locomotion is motile, and their mode of reproduction is sexual. And then comes kingdom Plantae, which are again eukaryotic, multicellular. They are purely photosynthetic. That means their mode of nutrition is photosynthetic. They are non-motile. That means they are completely sedentary at one place. And their mode of reproduction is sexual. So as you can see, out of the 5 kingdoms which was proposed by R.H. Whittaker, only the first one, that is kingdom Monera, this is made up of prokaryotes. Rest, all the other, that is Protista, fungi, Animalia and Plantae, these are eukaryotes. And these kingdoms are divided into certain subgroups that we will be studying further. Now, if you see the flow chart showing the hierarchy of this classification, it is always the kingdom first, and then the kingdom will be divided into phylums, the class, order, family, genus, and then comes the particular species. So now we'll take each of this kingdom and study them in detail. The first one is kingdom Monera. Kingdom Monera, it includes unicellular prokaryotic organisms as discussed, and as they are unicellular prokaryotic organisms, these are mainly bacteria that do not have a well-defined nucleus. Okay? Now, if they do not have a well-defined nucleus, if we talk about their genetic material, the DNA, it exists as a simple double-stranded circular single chromosomes which are called as nucleoids. Now, few of them are photoautotrophs. That means they make their own energy, or they create their energy by using light from the environment and also carbon dioxide from the environment. Some of them are chemoautotrophs. That means they create their energy from inorganic chemicals. And most of them are heterotrophic in nature. That means they use certain other organism or certain other source to obtain their energy. One more thing about Monera is that they are omnipresent. Now, what do you mean by omnipresent? Omnipresent means that they are present everywhere at the same time. Okay? So, omnipresent means they are present everywhere. Speaking about their cell wall, the cell wall is made up of peptidoglycan layer, which is also called as murine. Now, this peptidoglycan, it is a polymer of sugar and amino acid. The membrane-bound organelles such as endoplasmic reticulum, the mitochondria and the chloroplast are completely absent in kingdom Monera. And the ribosomes, they are smaller in size. Okay, they are subunit, it is smaller in size. It is only 70S as compared to eukaryotes. So if you know that in eukaryotes, the ribosomes are 80S, whereas in prokaryotes, they are 70S. The mode of reproduction, it is mainly asexual, but it is rarely sexual also. Now when we say it is asexual, there are two ways of asexual reproduction. The first one is binary fission and the second one is budding. So binary fission, we have always been studying from our lower classes that binary fission, it is seen in amoeba. So over here what happens is an amoeba will divide, it will undergo binary fission and form two daughter cells, and then the two daughter cells individually will undergo binary fission and produce more amoebas. Then the second one is budding. This is also an asexual mode of reproduction which is seen in yeast and in hydra. So yeast, it is unicellular, Hydra, which is multicellular. So in both these unicellular as well as multicellular organism, this budding mode of reproduction is seen, where there is this parent cell on which a bud is formed. Okay, and this bud, when it is completely developed, that means the bud is having its own nucleus, its own cytoplasm, then the bud will detach and then it will act as a parent cell again, which will give rise to more buds. So that is how asexual reproduction in Monera is of two types. It is either binary fission or budding. And there is rarely sexual reproduction which is seen, which is through the process of conjugation. Now conjugation, it is a process by which one bacterium, it transfers the genetic material into the another bacterium through a direct contact, which you can see over here in this picture. So there is a donor cell which is attached to a recipient cell with its pilus. Okay, the pilus, it draws the cells together. Now this, as you can see here in the second stage, the cells are in contact to one another. And in the third stage, one strand of the plasmid DNA, it gets transferred from the donor to the recipient. Correct? So as you can see, if this is the donor, it is having two strands of this plasmid DNA, out of which one is getting transferred into the recipient cell. Now at the initial stage, the donor cell is called as F plus cell, whereas the recipient's cell is known as F minus cell. But after the transfer of the single strand of this plasmid DNA, the recipient synthesizes a complementary strand and they become F plus. Okay, so the donor, it will synthesize its own complementary strand, and the recipient will also synthesize one more complementary strand. So this is a rare scene that is seen in Monera, that is conjugation, which is known as asexual reproduction. Now morphologically, that is the outer appearance, morphologically it is being characterized into four groups. Spherical, which is a cocos shape, all the shapes are given over here. Then there is rod shape, which is seen as in Bacillus. Then there is also comma or the kidney shape, that is Vibrio, that is this. It is not a complete comma, but then it is a slight bend, so it is known as a comma or a kidney shaped cell. And then there is spiral, which is known as spirillum. Okay, so this is about kingdom Monera. Now kingdom Monera, as I told you all, that these are bacterias, and the bacterias are of two types. The first one is archbacteria, and these archbacteria, they are differentiated from other bacteria on the basis of their different cellular features. These bacteria, they are mostly found in extreme environments, and so they are also known as extremophils. Now when we say in extreme environments, that means they are found at the places of volcanic craters, they are found in salty lakes, and they are also found in hot springs. Now when we say that they are found in salty lakes, that means they can withstand high salinity, and as they can withstand high salinity, they are known as halophils. And if they are found in volcanic craters, that means they can also withstand high temperature, and if they can withstand high temperature, they are known as thermophils. The examples of these archbacteria are methanogenic bacteria, which is found in the gut of the ruminants, that is cows and buffaloes. These bacteria, they help in the production of methane in biogas plants. The next one is eubacteria, and these bacteria are commonly referred to as true bacteria. Okay, because these bacteria, they have a cell wall of peptidoglycan, and they are both autotrophs and heterotrophs. Now when they are autotrophs, it can be photosynthetic or it can be chemosynthetic. So photosynthetic autotrophs are chlorobium, that is the green sulfur bacteria, and chromatium. And chemosynthetic autotrophs are sulfur bacteria. Now these are most commonly, they are multicellular filamentous forms, and they are also only found in fresh water, or we can say that they are mainly found in fresh water, and their body is covered by mucilaginous sheet. Now, speaking about their genetic material is typically prokaryotic. That means they do not have a well-defined nucleus, but they have this double-stranded chromosomes, a single chromosome which is known as nucleoid. Now, when we say that they are photosynthetic autotrophs, that means they are doing the process of photosynthesis, and if they are doing the process of photosynthesis, they will require some photosynthetic pigments. So the photosynthetic pigments that are found in these eubacteria are chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, then there is carotenes, and then there are xanthophylls. Now the filaments of these bacteria, they show heterocyst, and these heterocysts, they help in nitrogen fixation. Now these are about some of the autotrophs. Other than this, there are abundant heterotrophs which are present, and most of them are decomposers. When we say they are decomposers, that means they feed on dead and decaying organisms. So hence they are known as heterotrophs. That means they will require some other organism to obtain their own energy. So there can be anaerobes. The example of anaerobes are lactobacilli that helps in curdling of milk. Then there is nitrogen fixing organisms, that is azotobacters. Then there are antibiotic producing organisms or bacteria, which are the examples of which is streptomyces. And then there are composting and degrading oil bacteria. Then other than these autotrophs and heterotrophs, some of them are pathogens as well. So the disease causing bacteria like typhoid, cholera, then there is tuberculosis or tetanus, all of these are pathogenic eubacteria. Okay, so this was about kingdom Monera. The next kingdom is kingdom Protista, but before that there is also one more term which we need to study is mycoplasm. So mycoplasm, these are also included in Monera, and they are the smallest of the living forms, and they do not have a cell wall. Now many forms are pathogenic, they are mainly pathogenic, and they are found resistant to common antibiotics due to their absence of cell wall. Okay, so there is mycoplasma pneumonia, there is mycoplasma genitalium, and there is mycoplasma hominis. These are the three types of mycoplasm that are found, and all three are mainly resistant to most of the antibiotic. Now next, let us move to the next kingdom, that is kingdom Protista. And as I told you all, after Monera, all the other kingdoms, they are all eukaryotic. Only Monera is prokaryotic, that means they include bacteria. All the other are higher groups, so they are eukaryotic. So kingdom Protista, it includes unicellular organisms, but these unicellular organisms, they are eukaryotic in nature. And these organisms, the Protista, they are forming, or they show certain links between eukaryotic kingdoms like plant, animal and fungi. So on the basis of this, there is plant-like protist, there is animal-like protist, and then there is fungi-like protist. So let us study all of these three. The first one is plant-like protist, and they are also termed as chrysophytes. They are commonly called as phytoplanktons, and which are also known as microalgae. Okay, so they are microscopic, and so they are known as microalgae, and they are mostly photosynthetic in nature. And the major production of these plant-like protists or the phytoplanktons, it is mainly in the oceans. The most common and the most interesting one amongst them is diatoms. Now, diatoms, it has a body wall made up of two soap box-like structures, which are known as frustules. Okay, so there are two halves. This is the microscopic view of diatoms, and this is a magnified image of it. Okay, so there are different shapes and structures of diatoms, and this structure, it is made up of two halves. These two halves, they are arranged in a manner, or they are fitted in a manner like a soap box, Okay, and they are known as fristules. And it is made up of the covering or the cell wall, it is made up of silica. Now there is a very common and a very interesting term regarding this diatom is diatomaceous earth. This is the shells which are left behind for many years, and these shells are the silica cells. They are granular in nature, and as they are granular in nature, they are being powdered and they are used in various applications like polishing and filtration. They are used in pharmaceutical industry, and they are also used in forensic departments. Okay, so this was about the plant-like protist. The next one is animal-like protist, and they are known as protozoans. These protozoans, they lack the cell wall. They do not have cell wall, and they are purely heterotrophic in nature. That means they depend on other organisms to obtain their food and energy. And this animal-like protist, they are found to be and they are believed to be primitive animal forms. Okay, they are very old, they are very ancient, they are found to be primitive. Now there are types of these protozoans. There is amoeboid protozoans, there is flagellated protozoans, there is ciliated protozoans, and there is sporozoan protozoans. The first one is amoeboid protozoans, which have pseudopodias as their locomotory organisms. The most common example for this is amoeba. So the amoeba, they locomote or they move from one place to another through their pseudopodias. Okay, so example is amoeba, which is a free living form of antamoeba, which is an endoparasite which causes amoebic dysentery. So there are two types. Then there is flagellated protozoans, which have flagella for their locomotion. And the most common example for this is trypanosomas. Trypanosomas, they are having flagellas, or they are the common flagellated pathogens. And this pathogen, they are responsible for causing sleeping sickness. Okay, so this is flagellated protozoans. Then is ciliated protozoans, which are having cilias for their locomotion. So as you can see, this is a paramecium, which is an example for this. And this paramecium is having these cilias or the hair-like structures around it, which actually helps it for locomotion. Okay. Then is sporozoan protozoan, which is seen in Plasmodium vivax. Now Plasmodium vivax is a protozoan which is responsible for causing malaria. Okay. So it forms spores in one of its life stages when it is in the mosquito body, and then it enters into the human body and causes malaria. Okay, so this was about animal-like protist. The next one that we also need to study over here is dinoflagellates. Dinoflagellates, these are marine, they are mainly aquatic, and they are photosynthetic. Their cell wall, it is made up of cellulosic stiff plates. So as you can see over here, the ventral and the dorsal view of it. And they possess a pair of flagella. They have a wide range of photosynthetic pigments. They have yellow pigment, they have green, brown, blue, and red pigments. Now the most common and the most interesting example of this dinoflagellate is Guaniculax. Guaniculax is a dinoflagellate which is responsible for the famous red tides. These are, the dinoflagellate that causes red tides, and due to this red tides or due to this this type of dinoflagellate, the sea appears red in color. The next one is fungi-like protist, and they are commonly form a group known as Myxomycetes. They are saprophytic organisms. When we say they are saprophytic organisms, that means again they are found on decaying organic matter like leaves, bark of woods, or certain other organic matters. Their cells, they aggregate to form a large mass which is known as plasmodium. Now over here, this plasmodium is different from the malarial parasite. The malarial parasite is also known as Plasmodium vivax, but this plasmodium over here is different. The spores which are produced by these plasmodiums, they are very tough. That means they can survive again the extreme conditions, as they are you know that they can survive in very extreme and harsh condition, you can say. The examples are slime molds, which is here in this picture. Then there is water molds, and then there are downy mildew, which is seen in leaves, the yellowing of leaves. So this was about fungi-like protist. The next one is euglenoids, which are again considered in kingdom Protista. And this group, it lacks the cell wall, but they have a tough covering of proteinaceous pellicule. And they have two flagella. Now, out of the two flagella, one flagella is long, as you can see over here. This is a large, long flagella. And the other flagella is a short one that you can actually not see in this picture. Okay, it is that small. They behave purely heterotrophs in the absence of light. That means they can act both ways. They can be heterotrophs, they can be autotrophs. When there is no light, when there is absence of light, they become heterotrophs. That means they will feed on dead and decaying organism or certain other organisms. And when there is light, okay, and they possess certain pigments, they act as autotrophs. That means they can produce their own food or their own energy by photosynthesis process. So they behave as heterotrophs in absence of light, but they possess pigments similar to the higher plants for photosynthesis, and they act as autotrophs. So students, we end this session over here. In this session, we have completed two kingdoms, Kingdom Monera and Kingdom Protista. In the next session, we'll be moving to the next two kingdoms, okay, and in fact three kingdoms, Kingdom Fungi, Plants and Animalia.